Good afternoon, everybody. This year, 2021, is the year of the otter in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. Welcome to the webinar, The Otter Crossing Borders. My name is Ellen van Norre, project leader at the Dutch Mammal Society. I'm author of the Dutch Red List of Mammals, and I'm a volunteer in Calutra, our Otter and Beaver work group. In Calutra, we have initiated and organized the Year of the Otter in the Netherlands, and we have organized some webinars together with Belgium. The webinar today is organized together with Belgium and Germany, with WWF Belgium, Natuurschutzcentrum Kleve, and Otterzentrum Hankensbüttel. So I would like to warmly welcome everybody in this webinar. Herzlich willkommen zu allen aus Niedersachsen, Nord-Rhein-Westfalen und vielleicht auch aus anderen Bundesländern. Sie kunnen vragen stellen in Deutsch in de chat. En hartelijk welkom aan iedereen uit Nederland en Vlaanderen. Je kan je vragen stellen in de chat, ook in het Nederlands. Et bienvenue à tous en Wallonie, Luxembourg et France. C'est possible de poser des questions dans le chat en français. So feel welcome to ask questions in your own language. And we will answer them in the same language. This webinar is especially for professionals and volunteers working with otters and wetland restoration. If you want to know more about how otters live and which bottlenecks they face in their habitat, please have a look at the two previous webinars. They are in Dutch and they're also at this YouTube channel. Here you can also watch this webinar again. The reason that we organized this webinar is that our countries are very much in the mood for positive examples of returning species, of rewilding, and of increasing biodiversity in this biodiversity crisis. We want to get inspired and see that it is possible to take action and get species back that have disappeared. The otter is such a positive example. I think this is an important webinar. We can get to know each other and learn from each other. And think of it, we have managed to restore the habitat of the otter in some areas and reached a minimal viable population in the Netherlands. If we continue, we'll get a healthy population of otters to our complete region. And if we can do this in the densely populated area, it can be a very inspiring example for other areas in the world. Although we have densely populated areas and agricultural areas, there are enough possibilities to create habitat for otter. And to keep enough area, and also to keep enough area for agriculture, traffic, and cities. You could even say a connected water and nature network can be completed and it can coexist with the human network. This means the density of the people can never be an excuse anymore. But we are not there yet because still 1/3 to 1/4 of the total otter population in the Netherlands dies every year, of which the most of them in traffic. So therefore we need the positive examples and get inspired to take measures ourselves together with the parties around us. And we need to keep on communicating about the importance of biodiversity and rewilding. As David Attenborough said to the whole world in Glasgow, in his life, he has witnessed the massive decline of species and we can witness the recovery, but we need to take action. The otter only returns when the water and nature network is restored. And to restore this, it takes many costly measures. But imagine that with the otter, many other wetland species can survive or return. It might even save money on the longer run when your water and nature system is healthy, if it can store water after heavy rainfall. And if you can plan other measures to roads and bridges in advance, it can be combined with other work to these roads and bridges that is already necessary and which makes these measures less expensive. So find out for yourself that it's worthwhile the cost to restore the water and nature network in your country. So before I'll introduce you to the speakers of today, let's have a look at how the otter is doing. The Otterzentrum Hankensbüttel has made this map in 2023 and in 2016 and is working on an update. On the left, you can see the gigantic gap between Eastern Europe and the Southwestern Europe. The otter was vulnerable on the European Red List Our region is in between. On the map of 2016, you can see the reintroduction in the Netherlands and the shift of the population in Eastern Europe to the west and in Southwestern Europe to the northeast. This development has gone further because in the last meeting of the IUCN Otter Specialist Group in March, the specialists showed that the otter population has reached already Switzerland and northern Italy. So now we are waiting for the Eastern European population to connect to the population in the Netherlands. And then we are working on the connection to France. So I'm very much looking forward to the latest information from the different countries. Let me introduce you to the speakers. Well, from northeast to southwest, in Germany, in Lower Saxony, it's Friederike Schröder from the Otter Center Hangensbüttel. Then from North Rhine-Westphalia, Sebastian Wansia from the Nature Protection Center Kleve. Then from the Netherlands, Vilmar Dijkstra and myself from the Dutch Mammal Society. And from Belgium, Céline de Caluwe and Corentin Rousseau from WWF Belgium. Céline will present the information from Flanders and Corentin will present the information from Wallonia. First, they present the distribution of otters in their area, and then they will present some interesting examples of measures that are taken in their region. Well, feel free to ask your questions in the chat in your own language, and we'll answer them in the same language. Let me remind you that this webinar is free, and please support our work by a donation to one of these organizations. So now we go to Germany, to Friederike Schröder with an update of the distribution in Lower Saxony, followed by the other speakers. I'm very much looking forward to see the maps of the distribution of otter. Friederike, the floor is yours.
Hello everybody, my name is Friederike Schröder and I'm going to talk about the otter distribution in Lower Saxony. On this map, you see the distribution range of otters in Europe in 2016. At the moment, we are working on a new map with current data, but unfortunately, it's not ready yet. My colleague is writing to every country and asking for the data on otters, which she then converts and imports into our database, which is called OtterSpotter. And you see here in the middle of Europe, there's a white stripe where there are no otters at the moment, even though there used to be otters. On this map on the right, you see the distribution range of otters in Germany based on our current data. You can see the development of distribution. In yellow, you see the distribution until the year 2000, and in dark green, you see the distribution of the last 20 years. And yeah, the otters were spreading from the relict populations in the east. And at the moment, half of Germany is inhabited by otters. The problem is that not everywhere in Germany regular and systematic surveys are conducted, and some data is based on voluntary findings or random surveys. On this map of Lower Saxony, you can see the development of distribution when the first official survey was conducted. You see it in the top on the left. It was in 1991 and 1992. They only examined half of the state. It was the same in 1999 and 2000, and in 2007. The last statewide survey was covering actually the whole state, and they found that the increase of otter distribution was continued, and the next official survey will start soon. It will probably be next winter, and it will be interesting to see if the trend continues. This is the current distribution of otters in Lower Saxony. It shows all the positive proof that we have in our database. And it is a combination of surveys, voluntary findings, dead otters, and injured animals, with a 7-kilometer buffer around the positive proofs. At the moment, I'm working in Southwest Lower Saxony at a project called Action Plan Otter Southwest Lower Saxony, where I try to find out more about the otter population in this in the 3 districts: Grafrath-Bentheim, the southern part of the district of Emsland, and the district of Osnabrück. The project started in 2019, and I examined over 800 sites in using the European standard method, but I doubled the amount of sites. So in each 10 by 10 kilometer grid cells, I drove to 8 sites. Overall, at 47 sites, I found positive otter signs. So that's nearly 6% positive proofs. And if you remember the other map, it shows that in this area at the moment, it is the edge of the otter distribution in Lower Saxony. This area is therefore especially interesting because the origin of this population might either be the east of Germany, but it also might be the Netherlands, since the border is very close. We were particularly interested in how many otters are in the area and where this evidence could be found. During the last winter, I collected genetic samples at all the sites where I found positive signs. So I collected 61 fresh samples at 17 sites, and 10 individuals were found, 4 female, 5 male, and 1 could not be determined. Currently, data exchange about the origin of the sample is taking place. So it looks like 3 individuals migrated from the east and 7 are descendants from the Dutch population. Here on this map, you can see where I found the genetic samples, and we could, which samples we actually could use and got positive results back from. So only half of the samples were, we were able to get genetic profiles from, and some individuals were located on more than one site, and there was even one site where I found 2 individuals that you can see here in the top. So the question before was, did the otters origin was in the Netherlands, in Eastern Germany, or in North Rhine-Westphalia? So we could answer that. So most of them came across the border from the Netherlands, and some came from Eastern Germany. So there was some mixing in this area. I will soon finish my data analysis and define priority connecting waterways. And then I will develop measurement plans and finish the project in March. And of course, we will apply for follow-up projects so we can implement some measures in this area.
My name is Sebastian Banzia and I am working for a small NGO called Naturschutzzentrum im Kreis Kleve. We are working in the district of Kleve at the Lower Rhine region in North Rhine-Westphalia and are involved in many topics of nature conservation. Starting in 2017, we were one of 10 Dutch and German partners in a big Interreg project called Green Blue Rhine Alliance. As Naturschutzzentrum, we were mainly involved in a working group concerned with otters. I am going to talk about the otter distribution in North Rhine-Westphalia, and within that I'm representing the work of many others who have also worked in that field many years before me. North Rhine-Westphalia is located south of Lower Saxony in western Germany and shares a common border with the Netherlands and Belgium. Till the 19th century, otters were quite common in rivers and streams throughout the state, but due to pollution, overhunting and habitat destruction, they got extinct in the 1950s, like in many other regions of Europe. Back then, the closest otter populations were the ones in Lower Saxony and, after the successful reintroduction program, in the Belgium and Beaver in the Netherlands. There were no plans to bring back the otters to North Rhine-Westphalia. In 2009, however, 2 dead otters were found in the Münsterland area, one male and one lactating female. Shortly after, even a living otter was seen by hunters and anglers at night. This led to a distribution monitoring in the area of Dülm. In the next few years, the experts found evidence of a small population of about 20 individuals, and even reproduction could be proven. Genetic analysis showed that these otters were mostly related to the German otters in Lower Saxony. Dutch genetic material was only found in single individuals, but there was at least one Dutch-German offspring. So first genetic exchange already took place. On this map, you can see the latest positive monitoring locations for the otters in the Münsterland area in the red dots. The otters have already spread through different districts till the border to Lower Saxony and the Netherlands in the north. In the south, the River Lippe forms the distribution boundary. At the moment, there seems to be no spreading to the west where the Lower Rhine region is located. In 2017, the first mentioned Interreg project with Dutch and German organizations started at the Lower Rhine region, the Green Blue Rhine Alliance. In this project, it was shown that individual otters have transboundary territories in the Netherlands and Germany. In contrast to the Münsterland area, however, there was not yet any large-scale settlement. Reproduction did not take place until now. Genetic analysis showed that we have only Dutch animals here. To sum this up, today we have 2 subpopulations of otters in North Rhine-Westphalia. One in the Münsterland area that includes reproduction with mostly German-originated animals. This population spreads slowly. As the genetic analysis could not be continued in the last years, it is currently impossible to say how many individuals are involved and how strong the genetic exchange with the Dutch otters currently is. Additionally, there are a few transboundary otters at the Lower Rhine region. These otters originate from the Dutch population. Till now, there is no reproduction and no genetic exchange with the German otters.
Hello, I'm Philbert Dijkstra from the Mammal Society in the Netherlands. I will talk about otters in the Netherlands. The otter in the Netherlands got extinct in 1988, and 14 years later, reintroduction was started. This introduction was done by Wageningen Environmental Research, who did also the research around it. They monitored the distribution of the animals, and they did a genetic monitoring by sampling sprains and dead found otters. The sprained monitoring DNA was done until 2020. Because of the growth of the population and the distribution, the Mammal Society joined in 2012 with volunteers. And these volunteers were also collecting samples of sprains for the genetic monitoring. that unfortunately stopped in 2020. Now we see some maps about the distribution. The first one is from 2002 to 2006. We see in the northern part the reintroduction site. This is an area characterized as peat marshes, streams, and canals. And early after the first releases, otters left the reintroduction site and settled around this site or moved further away. And you can see that they moved rather large distances. The next map, until 2011, you see that distribution is increasing, and to the eastern side of Arnhem, that's in the middle part of the Netherlands, there was also a colonization by a female that was reintroduced in the north. And more surprisingly, she had a male from German origin. And that's rather nice that animals with another genetic base is that they may intermingle. Next map until 2016, you see that distribution is increasing more and more. And even in the western part of the Netherlands, there is a colonization. There's an area that's with large lakes and a lot of streams and canals. The last map is from the beginning of 2021. Well, distribution is going quite well, and we think that this trend will continue because we have a lot of area where water is abundant and food is there. Then we are looking to a graphic from the Wageningen Environmental Research with the population size. And just pay attention to the blue dots. Here you see that last year's the population size is increasing quite rapidly. The red dot is the estimation for the population size in 2020. And well, we think that this growth will continue. So that's a good view for the future for the otter. And that's my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
So hello everybody, I'm Corentin, working in Belgium on otter, but also on other species. So for the otter, I'm mainly focusing my work on the south of the country in Wallonia, and I will present you some insight about this species today.
Okay, hello, good afternoon everybody. I'm Céline de Caluwe, I'm the colleague of Corentin, so I also work for WWF in Belgium. And I work mainly in the northern part of Belgium, so in Flanders. So we start by sharing my screen. If that works well, you should be seeing the first slide by now. I will also give remote control to Corentin.
Perfect.
All right. So let's first have a little view on the historical distribution. It's a bit of the same situation in most of northwestern countries. That the otter was present in most of the water bodies in the country, and then had actually a very extreme decline until in 1987 the population was assumed to be extinct on a population level in Flanders at least. And the reasons for this decrease is also the same as the other countries in Europe. So it's habitat destruction and fragmentation on a quite quick and high level. It's traffic, it's pollution, and it's the historical hunting as well. So you can see the otter carrying all the pollutants that he had to unluckily assimilate in his body. And since he's on the top of the food chain, he's suffering a lot from the biomagnification, so he has really a lot of pollutants in his fat body. So, but today we are actually here to talk about an increase in population, so it's actually a positive story. This gives a bit of the dynamics just to show that indeed since 2002 the Netherlands have been working a lot on reintroduction of otters in their country, and we actually can pick the benefits from it as well, since we see that some individuals have crossed the border. And it's in a quite impressive way, because if you look on individual level, we see that some species, some individuals really crossed quite a big part of the country, up to more than 100 kilometers. And the next slides give us an overview of the observations in Flanders. So you can see that between 2000 and 2009, we had few observations, mainly in the province of Limburg. And then between 2010 and today, we have actually seen quite a big increase. So the red spots are like confirmed observations, and the blue spots are quite probable observations. And then you see the 3 circles. There are the places where we can assume that some individuals are residents, so they stay. We see them regularly during more than 1 year. So we have like the 3 big hotspots. It's in the northeastern part of Limburg, around Bocholt. It's in the Gelder region, so around Kruibeke, where we had a probable case of reproduction in 2014. And then here in this region, around the Durme and the Moervaart, where since 2 years we really have regularly, very regularly, at least 1 otter on the camera traps. So these observations come from different sources. So we have some visual observations, a lot of tracks. Camera trapping is a very important tool in monitoring. We had 2 traffic victims. We found some sprains, and then we have 1 eDNA case. It's also in the region of the Maas in Limburg. So we assume that the origin of these individuals are mainly from the reintroduction efforts from the Netherlands, but could also be of a natural recolonization from Germany, for instance, or the recovery of the relict population that could be still there in Wallonia or even in Flanders, with a question mark, because it's hard to really prove this. So this is a little video of who we call Mr. One Eye. So we know it's a mystery since we have seen it on some camera traps, also quite useful. Well, and the one eye, it's quite obvious as well, but it's a very interesting determination tool. So this is in the region of the Moervaart and the Durme. It's really very regularly that we see the otters on the beaver tracks. So we put the camera traps there where we know that beavers are present, and then we have some interesting interactions. So here you can clearly see that he has one eye, and this helps us a lot to understand possible pathways. So this is a map of the night walks of Mr. One Eye. So you have the red circles, they are the certain observations. And you see that the yellow pathways are like the probable pathways, and then the orange ones are quite sure. So we have some pictures from day 1, like 22nd of October in this region, and then day 2, 23rd of October in this region. So this is really interesting because we can assume how he walks. So, and we actually know that it's quite a lot. So for instance, if he would take the shortcut between these 2 regions, this would be at least 7 kilometers. But he has to cross quite an important point. So this is a big highway. It's a real bottleneck that is planned to be solved, but it's not solved yet. If he would take the bigger pathway, this would be up to 45 kilometers. But there are some interesting places on the way. So probable that he could pause there and catch some fish on the way. And then between this region and here, it is at least 12 kilometers. So if you would really assume that he would go all the way, he would have like 60 kilometers of river length to follow, which is quite huge. So we are really waiting to have some sightings over here to have some more solid conclusions. Okay.
And so south of Belgium, we assume that we have maybe still a relict population because we have a few sightings since more than 20, 30 years in Wallonia. So with the data from Natura 2000, we know that according to the Walloon administration, there are still 4 to 9 individuals, mainly in 3 river basins south of Belgium. And which is quite strange, is that we have a very few individuals since a very long time. And it's strange that the population doesn't increase or disappear, because when we have so few individuals, yeah, it's strange that they so low. So maybe it can be due to inbreeding, to some pollutant. We don't know yet. So for the I will try. Here it's the distribution of the otter a few years ago. So in the Semois, Ourt, and in the Our, we are sure that there are still at this time some individual. And last year we got also one picture from a camera trap of this otter that yeah, from all the specialists is an otter, and we assume that's an otter. And also there are like fishing ponds near this spot at 200 meters, and the owner of the fishing ponds saw also the otter few months before this picture has been taken. So it's quite sure that there was still this, at least one individual in this area, which is in the Ourt Valley. And so one of our hope is that there will be fresh blood from Netherlands in the coming years, or from Flanders for sure, or maybe from Germany. So the Meuse is quite wide in Netherlands, and we assume that otter can cross quite quickly the Meuse between Netherlands and Liège. And once the otter are in Liège, they can go in the Ourt, if they follow the yellow array here, and spread over all the Ardennes. And the habitats look good, so we are trying to restore some area, and we will talk a bit later about that.
Thank you, Celine and Corentin, for your presentation about the distribution in Belgium. And also thank you for the other presenters about the presentation of distribution in their countries. Now we will continue to the measures, some interesting measures that have been taken in Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium. And I hope that these will work inspiring for the other countries. So now we'll go on to the presentation of Friederike for North Rhine, for Lower Saxony, followed by the other presentations.
Hello. Now I'm going to present some measures to improve otter habitats. First, I'm going to talk about the different habitat requirements that otters have, and then I will present an ongoing project which aims at revitalizing the river, and then I will tell you about the positive effects this had. And at the end, I will present some converted bridges. The nonprofit organization that I'm working for was founded in 1979 by Klaus Reuter, because otter populations were declining rapidly in the region. In addition to a nature conservation center called Otter Zentrum, There are also enclosures where otter behavior is studied, as well as field research. We also implement many projects that aim to revitalize rivers and aquatic habitats. The otter acts as an umbrella species, so if we improve otter habitats, we also improve many other species' habitat. Otters have different habitat requirements. Resting sites are needed, and in case of human disturbances, wide riparian strips provide shelter. Food is the most basic requirement, so improving fish habitats also profits otters. And of course, otters need large territories, so safe migrating routes are important. Fish habitats differ based on the species, but most rivers and streams are highly altered, and so river bands were removed to ensure fast water removal from the area. So one main aim is not to restore the former state, but instead implement some structures which will help revitalize the river and to develop naturally into a more vital aquatic habitat. These measures are beneficial in many ways. A strong water current creates deeper areas, which help in dry and warm periods. At the same time, shallow areas are needed as well to provide spawning ground for insects and fish. Nurseries can be found in quiet zones of the rivers. Now I'm going to present a project that we implemented. It's called the Beaver project. This river is a slow flowing lowland river at the district of Gifhorn in southeast of Lower Saxony. The river is 37 kilometers long, and the project started in 1993. Since then, the main objective was a reduction of the frequency of water maintenance and ecological improvement. And this project was ongoing until 2007 and started again in 2019. On the picture on the top, you see the river in its former state in 1998, and in the bottom you see it several years later in 2021. It used to be a uniform and shallow river with a very slow flow velocity and a low number of fish. Now there's a wide riparian stripe of at least 10 meters, and many agricultural land was converted to extensive grassland. And typical tree and shrub species were planted, and many fish habitats were improved by using gravel and dead wood. One second. Here you can see the river at the same spot as the photos in the previous slide. In front of the camera, you see some dead wood, which is covered by plants and provides shelter for young fish. Because of this obstacle, the river current is stronger in the rear and the river bed is deeper as well. The opposite riverside is not managed, so trees and shrubs are growing there. And this side is only managed as much as needed. So there's also some shrubs growing here. On this map, you see the positive otter signs around the Otter Zentrum. There were no positive otter signs since the 1960s. And when the Beaver project started, this was also not the case. In 1999, first otter signs were found in the river and tributaries. At the moment, the whole of the region is inhabited by otters, as you can see here on the map. Since 1988, we are monitoring the Isar River system twice a year. For this, we survey 120 sites, and we could observe a steady increase of positive otter sites, which are either sprains or footprints. And as you can see here, there's some variation because this survey is done by volunteers. There's some variation in behavior, so some otters don't seem to mind dangerous bridges and pass under them. And on the other hand, some otters avoid bridges and avoid diving under them. So we find a particularly high amount of dead otters near bridges, which are very long and narrow without pathways. 90% of dead otters were killed by traffic. Most seem to be young males in search of a new territory. At the drawing on the top, you see different types of bridges, which we use to categorize bridges. We found some evidence that at type D and E, most otters leave the river and cross the road. And on the pictures up at the bottom, you see some problematic bridges. In case of flooding, otters also need to dive, which some seem to avoid. So if bridges have no walkways and are filled with waters, these otters tend to leave the water, and at this point they are in danger of being killed when they cross the street. Yeah, and longer bridges seem to be more problematic than short bridges. One solution to prevent road casualties is creating pathways under bridges. Otter use these to mark their territory and communicate with their conspecifics. The preferred method would be a solid pathway made of stone, sand, or even concrete. Of course, this could lead to problems with water discharge. So an alternative would be a wooden board, which can be installed at the side of the bridge. It is important that these structures are not too high above water level, and entry and exit from the water is possible. If these two options are not a possibility, a dry underpass could be installed, as you see on the right in the top. This would require fencing, so the otter has no path across the street for several meters. All these measures lead to safe migrating routes, which help otters to reach new territories and spread their distribution range. I hope you found this insight into otter habitats in Lower Saxony interesting, and I thank you for your attention.
In this presentation, I will talk about the Interreg project Grün-Blaue Rheinallianz, or Groen-Blauwe Rheinalliantie. As the name indicates, it was a Dutch-German transboundary project. We started in 2017 and finished the project in June 2021. In total, we were 10 Dutch and German partners. Among these, there were several NGOs in the field of nature conservation, like the Naturschutzzentrum im Kreis Kleve, that's us, but also authorities like Reichswaterstaat or Bezirksregierung Düsseldorf. In general, the goals of all these organizations are often similar. We all know about the ecological specialties of our region, and we all have ideas how to improve it. And nature doesn't stop at the border. Animals like the otters don't care, and the river Rhine itself doesn't care either. So it's only logical to work together. However, the way nature conservation is organized in the Netherlands and in Germany differs a lot. There are different responsibilities in the authorities. There are different ways of working historically and culturally. That makes it sometimes very hard to find the best cross-border partner if you have an idea. Within this project, the main goal was to create a network to solve all these problems. No one should ever again be afraid to call a cross-border colleague. And this is one of the main goals of all the Interact programs throughout Europe. In the project, we focused on different working groups, and within these groups we had different combinations of the 10 partners. One group focused on the otter. For that, we were 5 partners: ARC Natuurontwikkeling and Vereniging Nederlands Cultuurlandschap as Dutch partners, and Biologische Station im Kreis Wesel, NABU Naturschutzstation Niederrhein, and Naturschutzzentrum im Kreis Kleve as German partners. We also organized excursions with Dutch and German children at the same time. They should learn that there is no need to fear the others. They are normal people too. For all Interact projects, it is important to involve local people. For that, we started with school children. We went outside and wanted to show them the importance of an intact floodplain and what that means for animals and plants. We looked for otter tracks and explained the work of a biologist. We also organized excursions and events with adults, as we can go more into detail with them. On the right picture, for example, you can see an otter excursion we had with more than 50 Dutch and German participants. And as you can see on the umbrellas, there was heavy rain that day, so this was a huge success. Additionally, we hosted workshops to many otter-related topics like traffic death and the monitoring. For that, we invited stakeholders and policymakers. We combined Dutch and German people again because there was a huge difference in the experience with dealing with these things. Unfortunately, COVID-19 came and stopped all our efforts to bring these VIPs together more often. It was not possible to host excursions anymore. Beside these networking events, otters were part of a working package called Transboundary Ecological Connections, combined with migratory fish. However, today I will focus on the otter. In 2017, the situation for North Rhine-Westphalia was as follows. There were some otters in the Münsterland area, which is shown on the right map with the grey squares, and there were some otters in the Netherlands, which is shown on the left map. The German part of the Grün-Blaue Rhein-Allianz area is located more or less in between these two populations. Till then, we had a few sprains from one otter, which probably lives in the Dutch Ooipolder, which here and there crosses the German border, and we had one dead otter in Weeze. But besides that, nothing was known for the Lower Rhine region. So back then, the German population in the Münsterland area and the Dutch population did not mix that often. As both populations were very small, a genetic exchange would be very beneficial for both. And it was not unlikely that the Lower Rhine region can be one of the areas where this genetic exchange can take place. While in the Netherlands there was already an existing monitoring system, in North Rhine-Westphalia we started this for the first time for the Lower Rhine region. Together with the Dutch colleagues, we checked nearly all bridges and other structures along the rivers that seemed suitable for otters from our point of view. We looked out for footprints, of course for sprains, and we used camera traps. On this map you can see the project area. This is the very first combined map of the Netherlands and Germany without the border in between. It shows the results of the first monitoring season in winter 2017-2018. For better understanding, I circled the only German one, or the others were located in the Netherlands. It was the activity from the former mentioned otter of the Ooipolder. In the next winter, we already had 2 otters on the German side. One of them, the otter from the Ooipolder, which here and then crosses the German border, but secondly, an otter that came to Germany near the city of Emmerich. So we had an otter on both sides of the Rhine. We were very happy to prove once again the otter of the Ooipolder between Nijmegen and Kleve in the following winter. Unfortunately, it died after the winter season in a traffic accident on the Dutch side of the border. We did not find any proof of the otter near Emmerich in this winter. Following the death, there was no more otter between Nijmegen and Kleve in the Ooipolder in the next winter season. However, on the other side of the Rhine there were 2 new otters. From one of them, we can still find sprains till today. We also collected some sprains for genetic analysis and found out that all the otters we have in the border region are of Dutch origin. Monitoring was only one task. Another one was to provide shelter for the otters. Most of the Lower Rhine region is belonging to the former floodplain of the River Rhine, so flood management is a very important topic here. Our water boards are very strict with their river management, and as a consequence, as you can see on the pictures, there are many kilometers of river with hardly any structure for the animals. Otters need several hiding places alongside their territories. They prefer to use already existing structures like holes under trees or shrubs or left burrows of other animals. But these structures do not exist very much in our landscape. Because of that, we installed artificial otter holes. This is a system from the United Kingdom where experts used it for many years now. For Germany, right now, we do not have any proof yet that these will be used, but our Dutch colleagues from Vereniging Nederlands Cultuurlandschap could film an otter entering such an otter hole with a camera trap. A big problem in Germany was to convince the water boards. We have a huge problem with muskrat and nutria or Beaver in Netherlands. The water boards fear that these otter holes might support nutria and Beaver as well, so it took a long time to convince them. But as you all know, the biggest problem for otter conservation nowadays is the huge number of streets and traffic. Traffic death is still the #1 cause of death in Europe for otters. About 80% of all dead found otters were killed by cars, like this male otter in 2016 near Weze. To solve this problem, we made the first bottleneck analysis for North Rhine-Westphalia ever. The Ministry for Traffic already knows that they have to think of animals like otters when they build a new bridge, but there are no plans to change the situation on the already existing ones. Again, the Dutch colleagues were much more experienced in this matter, so they helped us to get a scheme to evaluate every bridge that we have in the project area. We looked at traffic intensity and the maximum speed. What does the bridge look like? Are there already existing bank-like passages like berms, or is there just a small opening? And what does the street look like? Are there any mitigating measures like roundabouts, traffic lights or drempels? We checked more than 300 potential bottlenecks. Every bottleneck was rated on a scale from 1, which means extremely dangerous, to 4, which means least dangerous. We then made the first transboundary map for Germany and the Netherlands with otter bottlenecks. Due to the better overview, we did not include the number 4 bottlenecks here. In our project budget, we had enough money to solve the most severe bottlenecks in Germany and the Netherlands. And while the Dutch colleagues could start immediately in solving the most severe bottlenecks, in Germany we only found problems and reasons not to do so. This has never been done before in North Rhine-Westphalia, so there was no example for all the authorities. There was a disagreement between the water boards and the street authorities. The water boards preferred walking ledges because they do not touch the water. The street authorities preferred solid berms because then you don't have to drill holes into the bridge. Another problem was the question of responsibility. We had money to solve the bottleneck, but not to pay for the maintenance in, let's say, 20 years in the future. And for the German authorities, this was a very important thing because they need a law which states that they have to do this. Otherwise, they are not allowed to. So it became quite clear that we had no other choice as to ask the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Traffic for help. We explained our plans and we explained why we think that these bottleneck solutions are a very important idea. Involving the ministries usually takes very much time, however. But in the end, we were successful and we were allowed to install the 3 first ever installed walking ledges at North Rhine-Westphalian bridges. Here on these 3 pictures you can see our 3 walking ledges. This was a really huge success And in the end, we were able to even have a cross-border Dutch-German opening ceremony with the two mayors of the neighboring cities. We even got permission to raise one existing berm, which is about 20 centimeters underwater at normal water levels. The hot and dry summers would have been a very good opportunity to change that, as you can see in this picture of 2020. However, this whole process took so much time that after the first heavy rainfalls in the beginning of 2021, the normal situation was restored, as you can see on this picture. Due to the short time left in the project, it was not possible anymore to solve this bottleneck. Now you might say that 3 solved bottlenecks in North Rhine-Westphalia is not very much. And you are right, there are so many more bottlenecks left, and it will not be easy to solve them as well. But now, for the first time, there are good examples in North Rhine-Westphalia to which ministries, authorities or other NGOs can refer. That's why it was so important to get this whole process started in the first place, and I'm very glad to be part of this. To come to an end, I would like to thank our financial supporters. First of all, the Interreg program Deutschland-Nederland and its co-funding organizations, the Provincie Gelderland and the Ministerium für Wirtschaft, Innovation, Digitalisierung und Energie des Landes Nordrhein-Westfalen. I would also like to thank the HIT Stiftung for co-financing the bottleneck solutions on the German side of the project to reduce traffic death of otters. Thank you very much for that. So last but not least, I would like to thank you all for your attention and for listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, for your presentation of the Green-Blue Alliance. And the Dutch Mammal Society has also joined this initiative. And I think it would be very interesting to have such an initiative in the northern part of the Netherlands with Niedersachsen and in the southern part of the Netherlands with Flanders. So let's continue to the presentation of the measures that have been taken for the otter in the Netherlands, or that have been taken for other reasons and have turned out to work out really well for otter. Also, I will show some success factors. While I am presenting some nice examples, don't hesitate to add your favorite measure in the chat. First, let me shortly remind you of the situations in the 70s and 80s when the last otter died. The water quality was really bad, with low levels of oxygen and polluted with PCBs and heavy metals. Seeing dead fish became normal. Fish fights were no longer from cotton and otters drowned in them. Natural streams were straightened in concrete. Nature areas were cut off by new roads and more traffic, so habitats of animals like otters were separated. And the last otter in the Netherlands died in traffic in 1988. The first most important factor for the recovery of the otter was not a measure in the field, but was the work of people, the endless work of some 10 to 15 or 20 people from various organizations throughout the Netherlands. They dedicated a lot of their time to the otter, to cleaner wetlands and to the reintroduction. They showed that otters and wetlands are worth fighting for. Some of them are on this photo in the middle. The dedication of these people was needed to collect the knowledge that was needed for the reintroduction. Many of them have given many lectures to inspire people. They have been pushing and pulling to get things done for the reintroduction program and the habitat restoration, and have brought to court that the government has to take care of taking measures for traffic. Some of these people are present today and still active for the otter. And recent, a new person can be added to this list of people. The one who made this tremendous documentary. I don't know if you have seen it already. And when everybody said that it was too silly to try because it was too difficult to spot an otter. Nice t-shirt, by the way. But he managed. His movie in Dutch and English was on the Dutch television and on the wildlife film festivals in the Netherlands and Germany. And after my presentation, we will see the trailer of the movie in English. Make sure you get to see it. Well, also the second important factor is about people. The people in the Netherlands love the otter. We consider the otter to be the king of the wetlands, the ambassador of all the work that has been done to improve water quality and nature areas. When the Otter movie was on television on the second day of the Year of the Otter, the incredible amount of 1.1 million people watched it. And in a national contest for the most favorite WhatsApp emoji on the national radio last week, the otter has won. Well, the other important measures for the recovery of the otter have been improvement of water quality, reconnecting wetlands with fauna tunnels, and hundreds of kilometers of nature-friendly bank sites and new wetlands. I'll show you some interesting examples. The one that I would like to show is Onlanden. It's in the northern part of the Netherlands, the red dot. And well, this area is close to the city of Groningen. And the city of Groningen flooded in 1998 from the streams upstream from the hills after heavy rainfall. And after July, everybody in our countries is most alert again on the risk of flooding. This area Onlanden was transformed from agricultural land to water storage and opened in 2012. When the area was established, next year, otters already discovered it. And 1 year later, young otters were born. Water storage and otter habitat can be a very good combination. There are more of these water storage areas throughout the country. The next area is close to it, which is called Drentse A. It's a meandering stream. Well, the other measure to save the city of Groningen was to keep more water in the system. Part of the Drentse A system was namely channeled. Now it's restored and meandering again, and biodiversity has recovered. It has become one of the most beautiful nature areas in the Netherlands. And the goal for the Drentse A was both to keep water in the system longer and to restore nature values. Well, the otter is very happy with it, and the beaver too. Do you want to see some more examples of the Netherlands? A student, Martin Brussaert, and me have done research on which measures have been taken to improve the nature quality from 1988 onwards. It can be found in his master thesis in English. I will put the link in the chat. He has also described the different routes to Germany and summarized the dimensioning of the otter habitat. This infographic was made by Evelien van der Jacht. Well, then still too many otters die in traffic. There are many examples that fauna tunnels under roads and otter boardwalk under bridges are used by otters and other animals. But they only work properly with fences to prevent the otter from crossing the road. With a fence like this on the photo. And the problem sometimes is, how can the otter find the right direction to a tunnel or to the otter shelf? Well, Vilmar told me an interesting measure to help the otter to find the right route to a tunnel. And that is to spray the smell of sprains to a new connection for otters. There's a woman, and the way she does it is that she dissolves some sprain in water and she sprinkles the water on the root with a watering can. And the otter can then follow the smell. Interesting, isn't it? The last measure that I would like to show you is the nature-friendly shore. And the nature-friendly shore you can see on the photo on the right. instead of a steel or wooden shore that you can see on the left. Nature-friendly shores offer coverage for otters to rest during the day, and it offers a migrating route from one nature area to the other. The problem is that when the vegetation is mowed on both sides, then no coverage and migration route are left. The solution is simple: phased mowing. One season, one bank is mowed, and the other season, the other. In winter, at least one bank has enough covering vegetation. And every kilometer, some bigger bushes are needed. Important for these shores is also that dogs can't enter the area. I have another example. In the last decades, hundreds of kilometers of nature-friendly banks have been established in the Netherlands for the Water Framework Directive goals and other goals. The nature-friendly shores are very suitable as an ecological connecting zone. Nature-friendly banks contribute to a healthy, clear water system because the water plants take the nutrients out of the water. And then one bonus measure is the man-made otter hold. This is a place where otters can rest or reproduce. It is only a solution in areas with too little covering vegetation for otters. For instance, because mowing is needed to guarantee safety against flooding. This is the end of my presentation. I would like to thank all the organizations that have supported the work for the otter and have taken measures in the year of the otter. These are some of the organizations, of the nature organizations and zoos that have cooperated together, and the governments. And there are many more water boards and provinces and governments and municipalities working together. And Wageningen Research and us doing the monitoring. Well, the next otter challenge is to get the west and south of the Netherlands ready for the otter and create a connection to the Biesbos, a large wetland in the southwest of the Netherlands, and intensify the connection with Flanders on the way to France. As I promised, we will have a look at the trailer of the English movie of the Otter by Hilco Jansma. And then we will continue to the presentations of Flanders and Wallonia. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, hello. So we are back here with Belgium. I will share my screen again and give control to my colleague. All right. So this is Belgium, and the light blue area is the Scheldt Basin. So starting in France, running through Belgium to the Netherlands. And the red square is the project area of the Sigma plan, which I will talk about in the next slides. And then the yellow circle gives you the location of where we have a project running at this moment. So the Sigma plan actually started in 1976. There were very big floodings in Flanders, and a lot of villages were totally flooded, and it was quite a disaster. And it's where we start realizing that we need to manage our water on a smarter way. So give more space for rivers, basically. And a quite ambitious plan started back then and is still ongoing today. Isn't fully realized yet, but has some very nice examples of how nature restoration can go hand in hand with mitigation of floodings. And so we have one example is the region of Kruibeke. It's like a floodplain of 600 hectares with a lot of objectives about birds, like you see the European pigeon here, but also on like flooded forests. And it today actually grew until a very interesting natural area, and it was also the first area next to Limburg where the otter came back. So it's really like a hotspot for otter at this moment. So I just, as an example, I gave also this little picture of the otter holes that the government has been installing recently, but it's more for communication because the real habitat is actually there and it's really very interesting. But we realized that we had some individuals, but we were wondering what are the chances for those individuals to grow up to a viable population in the long run. And therefore we worked with INBO. Well, they actually did 2 very interesting studies about habitat suitability for otter in Flanders. And to start with, we really had an intensive look on what are the ecological needs for otters. So in the meanwhile, we know that they need large areas, like up to 2,000 hectares per individual. Fish is their main staple food, so they need fish in the habitats up to 200 kilograms per hectare for Western Europe. Clean water is important, so we have the issue of the pollutants, persistent pollutants, basically in Belgium. And then large riparian vegetation is also very important, both for hiding, resting, and breeding. And then heavy traffic is a big threat, since they can die quite easily in traffic on cross points between waterways and highways. So this gives us, so those 2 studies gives us some insights, for instance, on this region. So it's called the Lower Scheldt Valley. This map has been made on a combination of the expert eye in the field and land cover. And we got insights on the numbers of hectares that are actually interesting for otter. And you can see that the blue area is like excellent, the green is good, and then the light yellow is neutral. Neutral is often just open spaces that are possibly intensive agriculture, but are still open and thus crossable by otters. So we have, in theory, because of course this is just a model and the reality is always different, but we would have in this region more or less a habitat for a bit less than 10 otters. And it's assumed that you would need 2 times 50 otters to have like a viable population. So one of the conclusions is that this is a very important region and that we really have to protect it and restore it, but that it's also important to make the connections to other river basins in Belgium and even with our neighbors. So this is for the land cover, and then more about the fish quality and density. So we did some extra research on some spots for fish in the region of Kruibeke. So you can see that 4 plots were outside the river itself, and 1 was inside the Schelde River. And it turns out that the quantity and the quality of crayfish was actually still a bit of a challenging factor, let's say. So the diversity of fish was assumed to be sufficient. The fish density was very different from one plot to the other, to others, but in general rather poor, but sufficient for otters. But then especially the PCB and the mercury levels were high, and often above the threshold limit value for otters. So it could have like an effect on the reproduction of otters or even on their own survival rates. And we noticed that especially the sea Schelde, so the Schelde itself, it had a higher fish density, but the ecotoxical level is very high, and especially for PCBs in eel, we were very surprised to see that sometimes it went over 40 times the threshold value. So an otter foraging in the sea Schelde itself is not such a good idea. So this gives us some food for discussion also about policy, about reconnecting the river with some outside areas. But yeah, these are challenging discussions. So the conclusion was that the area is really good, but that we really have to keep an eye on ecotoxicology. So about the project that we baptized as Otter Land, it's a project we have with the three other organizations whom you see the logo. So there are two regional landscapes that work on a regional level in close cooperation with local stakeholders, and then the Agency for Nature and Forest. So basically what we do is we help map bottlenecks on a regional level. We engage stakeholders, we did a lot of capacity exchange, and then we are making also an action plan for restoration together with the government. So this is an example of the participative mapping of bottlenecks. So we had several workshops with a lot of stakeholders, and we mapped the bottlenecks and opportunities, but here I only show the bottlenecks to otter in the region according to various categories. So in the legend left, you see that one of the category are the ways, like the infrastructural bottlenecks, but you also have like the missing natural corridors, fisheries, and recreation could be a bottleneck as well. So we have this map, comprehensive map, which gives us a lot of information on where to work on, and also very interesting to engage with stakeholders because it's so important when you have a local project. So the next step is we make a fish for every bottleneck where together with the government, so the INBO, Instituut voor Natuur- en Bosonderzoek, did a lot of work on this. And it gives us like a detailed insight of every bottleneck and a list of priority bottlenecks to solve. For instance, the speed limit is a quite important criteria since the level of danger increases a lot with the level of speed. And then we propose mitigating measures for every site. So the engagement part, as I said, is also quite interesting. So we did several webinars. So this is the last of this year, but before this one, we had 3 others. So it will be interesting maybe one day to translate them because they're quite interesting. Also a specific one about pollutants. We have a little podcast for children, and we have this exposition about otters, which is a mobile exposition. So it actually travels along the river and and welcomes local visitors. So if there would be interest, we can always talk to translate it. So maybe it could visit across the borders to other countries. So I give the word back to Corentin.
Yeah, I'm back. We don't have so precise data about the otter habitat and the potential habitat of the otter in Wallonia, but we have quite good and interesting data, for example, about the ecological status of the water. And as you can see here, in blue, it's a very good quality, green, quite good. And south of the corridor of the Maas and the Sambre, so south of Liège, Namur, and Charleroi, the water looks very good. And where the otter has been spotted the last year, it's mainly very good quality. So we can assume that the potential habitat is there for the species. And the University of Liège and the Service Public de Wallonie, so the administration, made a quite good study. And we also have since 15 years, the beaver that is back in many small streams of the Ardennes, and he play a quite important role in the habitat or the potential habitat of the otter by making a lot of marshes, it bring a lot of heterogeneity in the landscape. And also not this year, but the 3 last year, we had very important droughts in Belgium and also in other country for sure. And this the beaver ponds also help the fish to survive, because there was still quite a lot of water in these ponds, and sometimes the river was so small that yeah, the fish survived just there. So we see that beaver can help yeah, many other species and maybe the otter. And so the University of Liège has also made some mapping about the otter habitat, and it's looked quite good in Ardennes. So we have many data. We can see that the Semois, which is a very long river south of Wallonia, more than it's 200 kilometers of river, has some not so good area where we can walk to improve the habitat of the otter. So we choose to walk on the Semois, and also because there was also observation of the otter in the last year. It takes some time to move to the other slide here. So we have an action plan in the Semois. There we are working with a small NGO called the Contre-Rivière Semoisière, which is a small organization that is already working on biological quality of the river with many stakeholders, municipalities, local administration, other NGO. So they are already quite known on the field, and we have within our action plan different kind of action. For sure, we try to find the last otter in the river. So we have 20 camera trap in very nice spots. We didn't see otter yet, but we hope in the coming months or year. We are working also on the river bank of the river, also trying to improve the ecological continuity of the small stream going in the Semois. We are also working on the bridges and trying to avoid a traffic victim. And for sure, all these activities and action on the field bring also are raising awareness of local stakeholders and bring new capacity within the Contre-Rivière Semois, which is not working on the otter before. So they also have new knowledge and skill about the species. So here we had, for example, a small stream that was blocked by a pipe underneath a road. So 2 weeks ago, we opened this small dam to have a new ecological continuity of the river. Like you can see here, we just finished the work, so it's not so impressive yet, but we can see that the sediment already flow away, and it can form a very good spot for the trout, for example, to breed there. So the trout in the Semois come back every year in the small stream to breed, and many of them has small bottleneck, and the trout can't go up in the river. So we try to restore this ecological continuity, which can bring more food for the otter, for example. So the otter is also used as a umbrella species to work on on the whole habitat, which is bring a very good added value for the whole biodiversity. Here, I think it's the last slide from my part. So yeah, thank you very much, and feel free if you have questions to Celine or I. We will be very happy to answer them, and also if you have advice or remark, we are quite open to get them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Celine and Corentin. This is almost the end of the Year of the Otter. The final event of the Year of the Otter in the Netherlands will be the Symposium of Mustelids. One of 3 programs that day is completely about otter. This symposium will be in Dutch on the 3rd of December in Veenendaal. Find the link in the chat. For our neighboring countries, make sure you get to see the English or Dutch version of the movie of Hilco Jansma about otter. Well, I hope this webinar has inspired you to take actions for otter, whether this is in bridges and roads, communication or nature development. I would like to thank Friederike Schreuder, Sebastian Mancia, Vilmar Dijkstra, Céline de Calouet and Corentin Rousseau for their inspiring presentation. Please give them a big round of applause. This webinar can be watched anytime on this Kalutra YouTube channel. On behalf of the speakers, I would like to thank you for attending this webinar. Make sure you become a member of one of the organizations to support the protection of the otter and stay updated on this miraculous species. And stay healthy yourself. Thank you.